Okay, thank you very much. Dear member of the Nautical Archaeology Society, dear participants to this annual meeting, dear colleagues, it is an honor and a great pleasure for me to be here today, although by Zoom. But before to start my presentation, I would like to remember Patrice Paumet. Oh, sorry, it's not, okay. That probably most of you know. He left us 7 March 2021, aged 78, struck down by the illness against which he had battled for several years. With his death, the scientific community has lost one of the great masters of nautical archaeology, a discipline that he contributed to establishing and that he conducted at the highest level. You will hear his name several times during my presentation. I was an undergraduate student at the University of Turin, Italy, when I met for the first time Patrice. It was in 1993, during the conference held in Gela, Sicily, devoted to the Greco-Archaic seafaring in Western Mediterranean. Patrice presented there the newly discovered stone boat of Marseille, Place Jules Verne. Of course, as several other Italian students fascinated by underwater archaeology, I knew the book that Patrice wrote with Piero Alfredo Gianfrotta, Archeologia Subacquea. But it was so nice to have a talk with him, and also because Patrice was speaking a perfect Italian. Effectively, he passed several years in Italy as a member of the French school in Rome before getting a post at the National Center of Scientific Research, CNRS. After this meeting with Patrice, I decided to try to develop my knowledge in maritime and nautical archaeology and possibly to learn French. But today, I don't want to speak about me, but I would like just to remember the kindness, generosity of Patrice, without forgetting the pleasure I had to work with him. I must say that he was an example and that is still behind all our current projects in nautical archaeology at the Center Camille Jullian. It is therefore quite natural that I dedicate this presentation to his memory. The history of Saint Camille Jullian and nautical archaeology started in 1978, when André Chagnin commenced excavation of the Roman wreck, Planier 3, dated at the mid of the 1st century BC in Marseille Bay. The first fall campaign in 1969 was essentially devoted to evaluating the potential of the site and the excavation of the cargo composed by amphorae from Brindisi and pigments from Campania. I have just to remember that André Chagnin, assistant professor at the University of Provence, now Aix-Marseille University, and member of the Institute of Mediterranean Archaeology, today the Saint Camille Jullian, was nominated director of the French Ministry of Culture, newly created Direction des Recherches Archéologiques Sous-Marines in 1967. Chagnin, a world-renowned historian, archaeologist, and a specialist in ancient economy, was particularly switched on to develop underwater archaeology in France, conscious of the potential of the systematic study of shipwrecks for his scientific field of research, the ancient economy, as I say. He also played a decisive role in the development of maritime archaeology, introducing the young archaeologist Patrice Paumet to the study of ship construction. The following campaigns on Planier 3 wreck in 1970-1971 were mainly devoted to the hull study and were co-directed by Patrice Paumet, that you can see here studying the part of the hull on the deck of the scientific vessel of the Minister of Drasme, l'Archéonaute. The wreck, beyond its scientific interest, played the role of a technical test site in viewing of excavating the Madrague de Gien wreck, the shipwreck that is generally considered as a founding project for French scientific underwater archaeology. In 1970, André Cherniat assembled a team within the Institute of Mediterranean Archaeology made up of underwater archaeologists and specialist technicians from the French National Center for Scientific Research, CNRS, and also Jean-Marie Gassin, Michel Rival, and the photographer André Chenet, Gérard Réveillac, archaeologists like Antoinette Ternard and Patrice Paumet, also Marie-Brigitte Carr, joined the team as associate researchers. This was the first team of this type within either the French University or the CNRS. They became the Maritime and Nautical Archaeology team, then attached to the St. Camille Jullian that was created in 1978, following and from the Institute of Mediterranean Archaeology. You can see here in this photo some picture showing the underwater archaeology in this period of 70-71, and the system used for highlight the assembly of the hull of the shell, a system that is still used today. So from 1970, for the first time in France, photogrammetry was extensively used for the survey of the planetary wreck, coupled with classical survey methods, plans, and section. But it was in 1972 that this team of underwater archaeologists and technicians started the excavation of La Madrague de Gien wreck, located in the Hyères archipelago, east of Toulon, and dated to the mid of the 1st century BC. The excavation lasted 10 years and was directed by André Cherniat and Patrice Paumet, assisted by Antoinette Thenard. The method and techniques tested during the excavation of Planier 3 were developed and systematically used. So magnetic survey, photogrammetry, you can see here the method used, and also the drawings that were produced after the photogrammetric plan, and also hull sampling. This is the cutting of a portion of the bottom with this impressive hull. It is around 30 centimeters in height, with the double planking covering a sheeting of lead, and that permitted to study in detail the type of wood, the morphology of the timbers, etc., etc. This long-term project allowed the ship to be considered from a new anatomical perspective. The smallest elements, pegs, nails, and tree nails, and the biggest one, the keel, the planking, the frame, were studied as part of the complex floating structure, along with their deep cross correlations. Thanks to La Madrague de Gien project, Paumet started to develop most of the theories that would spark debate in nautical archaeology in the following decades. Research on the shell first, skeleton first, and mixed construction practice, the notion of architectural types and the interdependence of shape and structure, the use of traditional data, literary, iconography, and ethnography to help and support the type identification and interpretation, and of course, the study of tonnage and sailing capacity qualities. Just to remember, La Madrague de Gien was one of the biggest freighters sailing during the Roman Republic, bringing wine from Campania to southern France. It was a two-masted ship, around 40 meters long, that could carry around 400 or 500 tons of cargo. The extent of the preserved wreck allowed a light to be thrown on both the study of the cargo within the framework of research into maritime trade and the analysis of the hull, in order to evaluate how these two aspects of the ship work together, enabling the development of nautical archaeological study. As a consequence of this important excavation, Paumet research matured, and between 1980 and 1985, he established a new system for analyzing ancient ships based on the concepts of principle of construction and method of construction, referring the notion of conception and practical realization of the ships. In parallel to the excavation of La Madrague de Gien, in 1973-1975, two of the team members, Jean-Marie Gassin and Michel Rival, participated in the excavation and study of the Roman wrecks of Port-Vendre I and La Bourse de Marseille that you see here in the slides. This imperial wreck, abandoned in the harbor of Marseille at the end of the 2nd century AD, is the first wreck excavated in France in a systematical way in an ancient sintered harbor. In the wake of the Gien excavation, the Saint Camille Jullian took on the excavation of the Roman wrecks of Grand Ribaudet under the direction of Antoinette Hénard, and Camara II under the direction of Antoinette Hénard and Marie-Brigitte Carr. All of them were a part of the CNRS and member of Saint Camille Jullian. The Grand Ribaudet is one of the first, the ship that between the 1st century BC and the 1st century AD was built specifically to transport bulk wine in large containers, dolia. These researchers continued also more recently in the 90s, in the end of the 90s, in the year 2000, with other excavation in collaboration between the Camille Jullian and the Drasne. From 1991 to 2000, Paumet and Frédéric Guibal, the endocrinologist of the CNRS and member of the Mediterranean Institute of Marine and Terrestrial Biodiversity and Ecology in Aix-en-Provence, launched a program of research into the dendrochronology of ancient wrecks, which led to the reopening and analysis of about 30 ancient wrecks from along the French Mediterranean coast. In this slide, you can see Frédéric Rival, Michel Rival, and Patrice Paumet on the deck of l'Argonaut, and the master students Stéphanie Vichat, Charles Dagnon, and Julie Chasté. This program on dendrochronology of ancient Mediterranean shipwrecks had several objectives. First of all, identifying the different species of wood used in shipbuilding through systematic coelotomic analysis to try to understand the choices made by the shipwrights in relation to the different structural elements, studying the woodworking techniques to reconstruct the processes of transformation from the tree to the finished structure, studying the origin of the wood supplies, and eventually to establish the dendrochronological correlation between different wrecks, and finally, building up a reference database for the Northwestern Mediterranean species. In 1992 and 1993, the pre-construction archaeological excavation in Place Jules Verne in Marseille offered archaeologists under the direction of Antoinette Hénard the opportunity to excavate a large part of the ancient harbor of Marseille. On that occasion, 7 ancient wrecks of Greek and Roman dates were discovered and excavated, together with several structures belonging to the ancient harbor. The the white square indicate the place where the excavation were conducted. The study of these shipwrecks was entrusted to the Nautical Archaeology team of the St. Camille Jullian under the direction of Patrice Baumet, and all of these shipwrecks were analyzed in situ, and some of them were also recovered and conserved. This exceptional collection is today on display in the Musée d'Histoire de Marseille. Although an experimental approach was also applied to the Madrague de Gien for study and reconstruction, from the Jules Verne excavation onwards, the use of experimental archaeology and scale models in the process of reconstruction of the ship's shape and structure and for the systems of assemblage became systematic. As a result of studies on the wrecks of Place Jules Verne, new research direction could be discussed for technical transition phenomena. First, in 1996, on the transition between assembly techniques using ligatures to the system using mortise and tenon joints within the Greek tradition of sawn boats in Mediterranean, and then on the transition between shell construction and skeleton construction. And I remember that one article is published on the International Journal of Nautical Archaeology in 2012, signed by Baumet, Yakanov, and Eric Ritt. The excavation in Place Jules Verne was the starting point for another long-term project, leading in 2013 to the construction of Gyptis, a sailing replica of the ancient Greek archaic wreck Jules Verne 9, a project directed by Baumet and coordinated by Pierre Poveda. Several articles in the International Journal of Nautical Archaeology have been dedicated to this project. By my side, in 1999, I started a doctoral project at the St. Camille Jullian under the direction of Patrice Baumet. This project was focused on the Roman shipwrecks of Fiumicino in the context of the maritime port of Rome, Ostia Portus. It is in the late 1950, the excavation prior to the construction of the International Airport of Rome brought to light infrastructure related to Portus, the largest port in the Roman Empire, in particular the North Pier of the harbor here, and built by the Emperor Claudius, and in the mid of the 1st century AD. During the construction work on the service road around the airport between 1958 and 65, the remains of 5 Roman vessels were found, as well as part of 3 other ships and various artifacts. They form the collection of Museo delle Navi that you can see here, and you can see is very near to the airport. This is the northern mall of the big basin of Claudius that was there, and these are the position of the discovery of the ships. A new display, after 20 years, a new display has been inaugurated last October, and you are very welcome to visit this museum. The collection is unique. Fiumicino IV of the 3rd century AD was a small boat suitable for use at sea. Equipped with a square sail, it was used for short distance trade and coastal navigation. Fiumicino V was a navis vivaria, a special type of fishing boat. It was equipped with a compartment for keeping fish alive until they were landed. This boat has a pierced bottom for seawater to circulate. Pine wood plug, some of which were found intact, were used to adjust the water flow. Fiumicino 1, 2, and 3 were another type of ships, naves codicarie, similar in structure, but different in dimension. Some depiction dating between the 2nd and the 5th century AD, all of them coming from Ostia or Rome, offer a fairly faithful image of a codicaria vessel type. And you can see here these 7 depictions. The stern was high and curved, the bow slender, and the cable for towing. And the cable for towing was attached to the passing through the mast, and the mast was equipped with steps to climb up. Thanks to the flat bottom and the large hold, these harbor service boats, or lighters, were used to unload large freighters and to transport goods via the Tiber River to and from Rome. Always in the area of the maritime port of Rome, in 2011, I had the opportunity to excavate and study the remains of a new wreck discovered in Isola Sacra, which is this part of this zone, near the right bank of the Tiber, front of the ancient colony of Ostia. It was at the occasion of extensive archaeological program prior to the construction of the new bridge on the Tiber. The remains, as you can see, highly distorted due to post-depositional events, display a particular feature in the stem part. The bollards at the prow indicate the need for strong mooring, you can see here, and are very similar to the bollard shown in this relief from Salerno that is identified as a codicaria. And you can see also another bollard that is equipped with a rail to keep in place a washboard. The rounded contour of the ends of the planks, the luster strake below the waist, is evidence for a particular profile in relation with this other structure, timber, which is a transom. The shape and the structure of Isola Sacra 1 has been reconstructed on the basis of the 3D model realized in situ with photogrammetry, and also draw in 3D. And also a study model was built by Pierre Povedat and me to study the ship shape. You have to see that we reproduced all the point of attachment, all the tenons and pegs, and so we found naturally the shape of the ship. We used a real shell process to build these models, and it was very new in our methodology. The frame were printed in 3D thanks to the modeling, and so we reconstruct this ship. And you can see that the longitudinal profile has been compared to the profile of the vessels depicted on a terracotta plaque of Isola Sacra, where according to our hypothesis, is depicted a Codicaria type vessel with a transom bow, different from the Codicaria of Fiumicino which had pointed bows. You can see also the shape of this ship, which is very large, it's 13 meters in length and about 5 meters wide, not very high. Probably was, we have evidence that this ship had no deck, contrary of the reconstruction of Fiumicino. To continue, in 2004, during my PhD, I had also the opportunity to participate to the archaeological excavation undertaken in Piazza Municipio, Naples, before the construction of the C3 Metro Line 1. This huge excavation continued till 2066 with the construction of the Line 6 station, providing the unique opportunity to explore the ancient Neapolitan coastal landscape. In Piazza Municipio, besides the discovery of the port's impressive dredging activity and infrastructure, the investigation provided the evidence of 7 vessels dating back to the Hellenistic era until the Roman time. I was in charge of the direction of the study of the ships from 2004, and in 2014, Chiara Zazzaro from the University Orientale di Naples and Pierre Povedin were also involved in the project. The best preserved of the Neapolitan wrecks, Napoli A, Napoli C, and also had been the object of reconstruction programs, in part during the PhD research of Pierre Povedin, devoted to the reconstruction of sailing qualities of ancient vessels under the direction of Patrice Paumet. Always within my research on harbor and working boats initiated with the study of the Fiumicino ships, and after the study of the 3 shipwrecks found in Naples, I undertook from 2011 and 2013 the study of the 5 wrecks found in the ancient harbor of Toulon from 1987 to 1989. These ships were never studied in detail, but were recovered and conserved in Grenoble with polyethylene glycol, and then were stored in pieces in a depot of the Regional Archaeological Service. You can see here the fragments of the ship, and here the excavation, the plan of the excavation of the different shipwrecks that were found. Toulon 1 and 2 presented the particularity of a transom at one activity. They had been intentionally scuttled and repurposed to build a wharf. Exceptionally, they appear to be the same type of boat, only the dimensions are different. The detailed study of this wreck is nearing to be publication at the Presse Universitaire de Provence within a volume dedicated to the excavation of the harbor of Telomatius. Since 2007, in association with various Croatian partners, Irena Radic-Rossi of the University of Zadar, Ida Konzani-Uhac of the Archaeological Museum of Istria, Marko Huac of the Pula Conservation Office of the Ministry of Culture, Krunoslav Zubcic and Igor Miholjev of the Croatian Conservation Institute, I have co-directed archaeological research into ancient wrecks of Dalmatia, Istria, and on the river Kupa. This project is involved several members of the St. Camille Jullian, several students, and also a PhD researcher. Today, it will be too long to present one by one all these excavations and the results in terms of knowledge of ancient shipbuilding and seafaring in the Eastern Adriatic. Nevertheless, one of the most important achievements has been the characterization of a local sailboat tradition. We have studied the most ancient sail vessel ever found in Mediterranean in Zambratia Bay in Istria, with the Archaeological Museum of Istria. This is an extended and possibly an expanded logboat built between the end of the 12th century BC and the end of the 10th century BC. We have also studied the developments of the Adriatic sailboat tradition in Roman times, when people living in Istria and in Dalmatia, the Istrians and Liburnians, continued to build their ships using the sewing techniques. 2 articles have been recently published on the IJNA about the underwater site of Zasca and the 3 sailboats found there. Another article signed with Patrice Paumet is more general about the ancient Mediterranean sailboat tradition. Always in Croatia, we are actually studying a late Hellenistic wreck in the Bay of Pargine, island of Ilovik, in the Kvarner archipelago with the Croatian Conservation Institute. The ship hit the shoal and the hull broke up in several parts. In these slides, you can see the area and the stem area. They were found at a distance of around 20 meters. This ship is particularly interesting for its dating, the 2nd century BC, at the beginning of the Romanization of the Eastern Adriatic. The cargo composed by amphora containing wine and the cargo of timbers that you can see here and also in the planimetry. The presence of stones belonging to the ballast, they are under examination, and the particularity of the hull structure. This tenon and mortise built ship, probably 20 to 25 meters long, has a wine glass cross section and unsymmetrical longitudinal profile. This shape is rarely attested by the archaeology, although common in the ethnography. Sorry, I go back too fast. Another amazing project of the St. Camille Jullian team is the study of the late Hellenistic military ship discovered in the Black Sea by a team of the Institute of Archaeology of the Russian Academy of Science, led by Sergei Olkovsky. An article with a detailed description of the hull structure will be published soon on the next IJNA issue. A complete program of reconstruction through digital and physical 3D model is in progress, and the results of the reconstruction of the hull shape have been recently presented in Zadar at the 16th International Symposium on Boat and Ship Archaeology. And finally, I would like to come back to La Madrague du Géant Grec. Recently, Laetitia Cavassa, CNRS and archaeology specialist in ceramic study, together with Pierre Poveda, started a 3-year project with the intention to succeed in the final publication of this 10-year excavation. Several researchers of the St. Camille Jullian, André Cherniard, the late Patrice Paumet, Marie-Brigitte Carr, myself, and other people are involved in this project that, besides the final publication, has 3 main objectives. First, to digitalize organize and study all the documentation already produced. Then, to create a photogrammetry of the cargo coupled with the geographical information system in order to localize the fragments of the same ceramic vessels and to identify the kitchen and storage areas on board. In these slides, you can see the examples of a big clay oven recovered in several fragments in different campaigns, and thanks to the ancient documentation and the methodology developed for this project, it has been possible to circumscribe a zone situated forward the mast where this object was situated. Finally, the third goal is to create a 3D model of the hull structure and to study the hydrostatics and of this extraordinary ship. And so, with this project on La Mandrake de Gien, the circle is now complete and it's time to conclude. But not before to remember that our program of training in maritime, coastal and maritime archaeology, the MOMARC Master, that is where a lot of people from our team are teaching. And with this slide, I would like to thank you for your attention. And I hope you enjoyed my presentation of past and present researchers in nautical archaeology in our center, Camille Jullian. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Giulia. I'm just going to say, wow. My goodness. Every now and then you watch a presentation, you just wish that you lived a different life and was somebody else. But that is just astonishing, the level of detail. It seems that you can't dig anywhere in the Mediterranean without finding some vessel that's in the mud. There's been a lot of reclamation then, presumably. A lot of these things would have been on the coast and underwater and are now actually on dry land. Yeah. Yes, it's true that with the developing of work on the coastal part of the cities, for example, for this work of preventive archaeology, a lot of ancient shipwrecks were found in harbors or silted, ancient harbors silted. You know this amazing discovery in Yeni Kapı in Istanbul, where 37 shipwrecks were found, dating back to the 5th century AD to the Byzantine time in 12th century AD. So it's really that now in Mediterranean, this zone of harbor, ancient harbor, give us a huge amount of shipwrecks and new type of ship to study. And so there were ancient discoveries as the Fiumicino wreck that were not studied in detail, but from the 80s onward, we had really a lot of discoveries all around the Mediterranean, and probably more in future. Do ask your questions, folks. If you use the Q&A section or maybe even the chat, that would be great. Yeah. Can I ask who pays all of these things that are found in developments? Is there a developer pays principle, or is it paid for by the state? How are the costs covered? Yeah, okay. For the people working in St. Camille Jullian, we are employed by the Ministry of Research and Higher Education. So we are, I would say, fonctionnaire. Of course, we have to pass a concourse to enter, so it's not so easy. But we are permanent researcher, and normally we are researcher. We have to do research 100% of our time.
So most of the research are funded by our employer, by CNRS or university, but then we can ask for money to foundation, do projects, European projects or other stuff, etc. So we try to get money where we can, but of course, as you know, people is the most expensive part. So we are very, very lucky that we are employed and we can do all these researches. Then we established a collaboration with other institutions, and they bring money from their own institution or their own ministry of attachment, for example. Is the example when I'm working in Croatia, where my researchers are mainly funded by the French Foreign Minister for Foreign Affairs, and by the Minister of Culture of the Republic of Croatia for the Croatian side. Then, for example, in Naples, the situation was different because there, this was a preventive archaeological operation. So it was paid by the city of Naples and also European, with other European projects. And it was a society, the Metro, that at the end paid for archaeologists to be there on the excavation. But all these works were conducted and led by, from the scientific point of view, by a person that was working for the superintendence of archaeology of Naples, an archaeologist that was controlling this excavation for 20 years and more, because it was very huge. This is more or less the system. In France now we have the Institute of INRAP, the National Institute for Preventive Research, which is half public and half private institution. So there is a special tax in France that all the people that want to build some roads or other parking, etc., have to pay, or also houses, a small, very small tax. But all this amount of money is used to conduct investigation to see if there are some archaeological remains in places, and then there are a public competition at the European level for the if the Minister of Culture say that is necessary to do a preventive excavation, of course, then there is a public competition, and the public, how to say, the enterprise that is building, I don't know, the parking, etc., have to pay for the excavation. And this is still controlled by the Minister of Culture, of course, which is the guarantee of the scientific, that scientifically the work are going well, etc.
Thank you. Miranda, our editor, of course, asks whether the final publication on Madrag de Gien will be in English or only in French.
It will be in French. It will be in French. It will be a first. It was no easy, this project, of course, because you have to imagine. I showed the slide how many negative slides and other documents we have in Sainte Camille Jullian. So it is also the occasion to have a proper archive and everything arranged. And but of course, then from this project and this publication, it will be possible to have translations or a presentation. I think that
one paper will be presented in the next Honor Frost Foundation conference under the Mediterranean 2 in Malta. So there are surely the volunteer to share this project in the English way, in the English language.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid we have run out of time, folks. We're exactly on 2:45 here. Thank you so much, Giulia, for doing that, for preparing your presentation. That was beautiful. I really did enjoy